Welcome back to the Do Not Ignore Your Mortality podcast. I'm here with James McNeil here today, and James is a licensed funeral director, as I am, and we are continuing our conversation about to how easy it is to actually pass away.
Yeah.
So, James, I'll let you go ahead and continue talking about it. I'm not sure how to actually position this in such a way that is going to be of most interest. But
as more and more people get their hands on your book, and the underlying encouragement is for people to make plans for the inevitable, and people will pick up on that very quickly as we start going through your book and as people read the book. But the idea, and we were talking about this, for a funeral director or for an insurance person or for anyone that deals with death, to say, well, you never know. You never know when you're going to go. It could almost sound kind of salesy, like you better get in by Wednesday because it's going up on Thursday, that type of thing. But in real conversations, when people catch a glimpse and say, well, wait a minute, these folks are seasoned professionals with thousands and thousands of hours under their belt of dealing with death situations. So when we say, yes, you never know, people die very suddenly in 1,000,001 scenarios, and none of them thought that was going to be them. And so, therefore the whole planning thing always comes into play. But it's incredible how many horrible surprises people can get in this lifetime that result in dealing with the death of somebody.
Yes. Yep. I agree. And when I think of the numerous times that when I was working actively as a funeral director years ago, sitting down in an arrangement office with a family who would quite often say to me, and you've heard this many times, I'm sure, we just never expected this to happen. We didn't think our day would be involving a death at all. And they were basically wringing their hands, not knowing what to expect next.
Right. That's right. There's the name of the book is gone, but it's a book actually you suggested that I get, and I did, and I've been really enjoying it. But a point that gets made in this book is, like, say you and I, we're older gentlemen, but we don't know anything. We weren't living 100 years ago. We say to go back 100 years ago, death was very much on the table all the time. Ladies died in childbirth. People cut their hands at work, got an infection, died. People got things that we easily have overcome now with something as simple as penicillin. So 100 years ago, death was like in the next room all of the time, and people were maybe tougher than they are now. So now we've been able to, which is great, through science and medicine and technology, we've been able to push death farther and farther and farther out to the margins of life. We're living longer, And so when death does occur, especially suddenly, it's like the carpet is pulled out, and then you mix in no planning. It's oh my goodness. It's like you said, they're saying, Greg, we thought we were going golfing today, but now I'm talking to a funeral director. Like it's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that it is. And in many cases, as you know, the survivors can almost be numb to the point where they find it hard to almost do anything because they're so overcome with this intense grief.
Sure.
Just out of the blue.
Well, it's funny, not funny, but interesting how that is so common, that the numbness, or people say they're in denial, they're in shock. That's a beautiful part of the design, I believe, the way that the human psyche and emotional system has been sort of designed, that if we took the full brunt of those really traumatic things that happened to us in our lifetime, none of us would make it. We'd all die too. But there's sort of like this, like, layers of sort of like protection, call it shock, call it whatever, that allows you to get through the first few hours or days or so. So, people say, I don't even remember being here the other day. So yeah, that's normal. And, maybe be thankful that you had this cushion of just being dumbfounded kind of thing. But it's a protective thing. It's a defense mechanism to go, like, on autopilot and, do your thing. But yeah, for sure. You've met those families, and you're talking to them. They're nodding their head. You're thinking, you're not hearing a word I'm saying right now. And then
Yeah.
you see them in 3 days. They ask you all the same questions. You realize, you know what? I knew you weren't hearing me, but that's okay, Mildred. We're going to get you through this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we do as professional funeral directors.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a comment that I don't know where you've relocated, but I love your background. Okay.
Well, yes, it's a new approach. I'm trying to bring the fun back to funeral. I've been
Oh,
trying for a long time.
you're the guy who made up that statement. Okay, that works. Yeah, no, it looks
No,
great.
no,
Looks good.
I'm just borrowing that saying from hearing it long, long ago. But
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I'm trying to bring a fresh, uplifting approach to this, and I think you and I, James, are doing a good job of creating some compelling content that will really help people to appreciate these sorts of things and how delicate life truly is. And yeah, I know it's an incredibly serious topic, and I've got this goofy animated cemetery behind
No,
me,
no,
but
no. It's good. It's good. It's perfect because you're right. These are things that must be talked about. They really do. That's the mission. Let's talk about these things. So, yeah, the background. Hey, if that's going to get someone to say, "Oh, yeah, maybe I can watch this," because maybe there's
yeah,
some things we've already said in this podcast that would have people saying, "Oh no, I'm not going there. I'm not talking about this." But
yeah.
if someone sees that background and says, "Well, maybe," as long as you don't start putting a red nose on or something like that, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. That's
right,
right. Well, hopefully this approach will entice some people to take a serious look at this. And I know, but ultimately we're going to get to the point, James, where we will be going through the book
yeah,
that I have taken all this time to write and publish,
yeah,
and help people understand some of the important aspects within it. But for today's topic, we had spoke about the idea of explaining to people these various situations that we have seen about the delicate nature of life.
right.
And why don't you go ahead and maybe share some of the things that come to your mind?
Well, there's so many of them, and certainly the last thing we would ever do is mention anyone's name. So they're scenarios, but they're real scenarios. I think of one of many on a list would be, say, someone that for whatever reason had to enter into this is like a regular normal working person with a life, has some kind of an injury that causes them to enter into the use of prescription drugs. They're
Yeah.
doing them very sensibly and responsibly, but sometimes there could be a misprescription, or an accident happens with the intake of certain prescription drugs, and sometimes it's the side effects, and then you have a sudden death on your hands, and like those kind of scenarios where people are thinking, mom or dad or Uncle Joe is getting better, he's got taking his meds, but somehow it's the meds are somehow create the perfect storm where now they're dead. And
Yes.
it's just a horrible situation where everyone's sort of looking one way, and all of a sudden life jerks them this way.
Yeah.
Suicide is a whole topic.
Yeah.
That's probably a 10 episodes. So I won't get really detailed in that, but of course suicide is very much on that list, where people are just moseying along in their life, everything's moving along, we're making assumptions like tomorrow will be like the next day, will be like the next day, and then summer will come and we'll go to the beach, and then whammo,
Yeah.
someone has chosen to end their life. We see it with celebrities.
Yeah.
Every time someone reposts a picture of Robin Williams, I'm still thinking, I grew up watching him. Mork from
Yeah.
Ork, the funniest guy in the world, loved by everyone. Bam, whatever his story was, that then he decided to not be there. So we see it in celebrity world. So no one's immune to that stuff. But that's the perfect storm again of everyone is assuming everything is fine. Everything is fine. Maybe we'll plan. We don't need to. Everything's fine today. But then Zammo, you're broadsided with a death, and especially when suicide is, it's incredibly complicated. Again,
Yeah.
that's several podcasts in its own, so I won't sort of touch on that massive topic there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then the horrible thing of just accidents. People are going on a trip to have a great time, and then a horrible accident happens. It's connected with a trip, whether it's a vehicle, it's a water accident, on and on and on. these things that were not in the plans. The plans were other things that were fun and selfies, and here we go, and photos and great times and sunburns, and then whammo, they're talking to a funeral director. It's it's tragic, but very, very real.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And we've both seen, we've both worked in the funeral business for quite a number of years to be able to have a wide experience of being, helping families at such a difficult time. One of the situations that comes to my mind years ago, actually, you wouldn't think of this as typically being a cause of death, but I remember a younger woman who was driving her car. She was a smaller framed woman, and her airbag went off and it actually killed her.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Isn't that strange? Airbags are meant to protect us, and in this particular case, it was the cause of her death.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can just imagine what the family's going through, especially for a younger lady. She's got a whole life ahead of her. Yeah. And I would seriously doubt that young lady, she had no plans, because she's young. She's invincible, like we were. And, but I do find that in those scenarios that we've both sat through, almost an endless list of things like that, the tragedy happens, people are dealing with it. And whether it's the immediate people that you're dealing with or the peripheral people, sometimes you see the gears turning, think like, we better get some plans in place, because I don't want this to happen to my people if I suddenly kicked off or something. So all of the basic planning or the intricate planning, but it's a catalyst for people. It's a horrible catalyst that shocks you awake to think, yeah, planning is very good and strongly advised.
Yeah, I agree. Another aspect or a theme that I have seen a lot, and I'm sure you have too, is drug overdose.
Yeah. Well, we live in a horror. I think it was the leading cause of death in British Columbia last year. Did you hear that? Something like that. It was
I think I did, yes, and that doesn't surprise me.
Leading cause of death. Oh my goodness, like that. Wow. What one? There's social decay. That's a real thing that we certainly. There's always been trouble with humanity and blah blah blah, but we seem like we're going the wrong direction. But yeah, I heard that. I thought usually the largest cause of death is like heart disease or some kind of cancer, one of the big ones. But
Yes,
drug overdose, that's self-inflicted, and wow, horrible. Yeah, those are and all the aspects. Again, that's another series of podcasts right there. Is dealing with addicted people, and that the trauma in the whole family. Because say the person that ODs, well, he's dead or she's dead, but the whole family is destroyed. Because again, like a suicide, you're left with endless questions that will never be answered. You're screaming them out into silence. What if I had done? If I had to come on Wednesday? If I had done this? If I had not shut you out? What if? Could have? Torture for the survivors. But yeah, sudden death again with that. I've seen this, and I know you have too. I hope my lighting doesn't seem like I'm too like kind of what's the word? What's that Francis Ford Coppola movie?
It seems fine to me.
Apocalypse Now. Okay, yeah, seems like the Marlon Brando character with the with the scenario. It's another sudden death scenario, but it's very particular, and it's I don't even know what the right adjectives are, but it's like death from a broken heart, which sounds like something out of a fairy tale, but say a man and a woman been married 50, 60, 70 years, the man or the woman dies, and almost immediately, like talking days later, the surviving spouse dies, wasn't overly ill, wasn't overly frail, but it's almost like they said, I just don't want to be here anymore. And they just die.
They give up, I think, in a lot of cases. I've seen it too.
Yeah, give up or let go or whatever. But I remember the first time I saw that, I said, that's a strange coincidence, because he loved her so much. And he wasn't even that sick, and he just happened to die. Wow. And then seeing it again and again over the last 20 years, thinking, wow, yeah, it's I've never seen that on a medical certificate of death, died from broken heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's like the emotions and the spirituality and all of the things come together where suddenly, oh my goodness, mom died last night and dad died 3 days ago. And that's another one. I was going to say bittersweet. It's not, there's no sweetness to it, but it's, people say, well, at least they're reunited or whatever. But that's
Yeah.
another, the other end of the spectrum. Cause usually those scenarios, people are quite elderly in a beautiful way.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago that I had read somewhere online that there's an organization in Switzerland, I believe. I think it's called Exit International or something along those lines. But
Okay.
this is an organization that and I really know nothing about them, just the little bit that I've read online. But from what I have read, they help people in their life, and there doesn't have to be a particular reason. It's a further advancement from the medical assistance in dying program that exists here in Canada.
Okay.
But apparently, quite a number of couples choose to end their life with this organization in Switzerland because one of the couples, one of the partners is sick and dying, and the other one doesn't want to live without that person. So they both decide to end their life at the same time.
Wow. Holy cow. I've never heard of that. I get it, because that's basically what we sort of said, like the natural way. But
Yeah.
yeah, well, again, you just mentioned MAID or medical assistance in dying. That's another 15 podcasts. My goodness,
Yes. Yeah.
that's a whole other dynamic.
Yeah.
I remember the very first time I took a phone call from a lady. This is about 5 years ago. Lady called and said, "I'm dying of cancer." I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." She said, "I need to make plans." I said, "Okay, I'm at your disposal. Is it easier for me to come to you? Do you want to come there?" She goes, No. She goes, "It'll be next Wednesday at 2." And I thought, okay, this poor lady is starting to lose her mind a little bit. And so I just kind of said, okay, so would you like the appointment next Wednesday too? She goes, no, I'll be, I'm having the MAID program. And then again, this is 5 years ago. I'm thinking like, I'm thinking Molly MAID. I'm thinking I was completely confused.
Yeah.
And she said, no, medical assistance in dying. And I'm getting educated by my client over the phone 5 years ago, because I didn't realize it had become green lighted from coast to coast.
Yeah.
And then, end of the story, we, that Wednesday at 2, we arrived to her home, met the nurse, and brought her into our care. I thought, wow. So definitely not a sudden death, a planned death. And that's a whole other dossier of podcasts and things like that. But yeah, crazy stuff.
It is, and I found it hard to get my mind around it when I had left the funeral business and joined the financial planning industry, and then I came back to the funeral industry with this large mortuary agency, where it was written on the board that at a certain date at a certain time we would be expected to be on call to go and pick up this person that was basically going to have their life ended because of the MAID program, and it would just seem to me to be so bizarre and different from what I was used to when I had worked years prior in the funeral business.
Right. Well, yeah, years ago, remember the whole Jack Kevorkian thing, and
Yes.
It was very taboo, and in the courts, and rarely talked about. People were making these trips to Sweden or Switzerland or Norway, and it just seems so alien. And now here we are. I think the last number I heard, something like 45,000 people since its inception have exited through the MAID program in Canada, coast to coast. That's a lot of people.
It is. And I remember when I was years ago not too long ago, living in Alberta, there was a statistic that I had read that talked about how popular that program in Alberta was. And I'm sure in most of the jurisdictions across Canada, as you had just referenced, there's a lot of people that are at that point, I guess, that just feel that it is their best option. And this coming March, in March of 2024, there's another change coming to the MAID program, and it has to do with mental health.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Like you certainly, like, not to caricature it, but like I say, someone is really down in the dumps. Well, no, you don't get to You don't get to use the MATE program because you're going through a temporary depression kind of thing. That's what people I think are afraid of. That
Yes.
some of this bipolar, when they're on the lower side of their cycle, that's when they'd want to leave. When they're on the higher part, I don't know. It's good, So yeah, it's a complicated thing for
It
sure.
is, and it's a very controversial topic.
Yeah.
And actually, I was on the website of there's an organization here in Canada. I'm sure you've heard of it, called Dying with Dignity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So and they've got a lot of really good information on their website that talks about these pending changes and
Right.
and how their position is that people should have this choice when they get to the end of their life. And there's a lot of stop measures in place to make sure that it's validated and to make sure that this is truly what the person wants. But I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. When you deal with it face on, and I've never dealt with it in my personal family, but I don't hold my opinion with an iron grip as much as I think I used to, because I've never been in the situation to really make the choice. Obviously, I'm still here. I like to think I'm going to hang on to the bitter end, but yeah, there's so many scenarios where when people are driven to make that decision, not because they're kind of sick, they're in writhing pain that's not touched by medication. Yeah, it's complicated, but back to what we're off to talk about planning. So we're talking about people planning their actual death on the time and the day and what chair will sit in. Not all those people I've found are even planned for what happens next. So sometimes that's even kind of, I wouldn't say this to the family, but I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, all the planning that went into that afternoon, but you didn't make any other plans. Your planning went up to the edge of the abyss, and then you stopped. Because then it's sort of like, okay, so what's your mom's maiden name? And we got to start right from scratch. So just because someone does that doesn't mean that they're planned everything. They've just kind of planned part of the journey. But planning can never be. You can never stress it too much, because people need the reminders.
Yeah, that's right. I remember years ago speaking with some people who had bought cemetery property, and as far as they were concerned, they had everything all wrapped up and looked after.
Yeah. I've met some people say, well, Mom said she had it all together. She had to, and then we call and sort of like, oh yeah, she bought a grave. Okay, so is that like, is there more? Like, yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot more.
Right.
That's funny. Or sometimes they talk to someone at the cemetery or the funeral home. They had a conversation with a nice guy or lady, and we're all set. And that we talk to people all the time, and we don't try to close the deal. So it's just a friendly conversation, a cup of tea, and then she said, "Oh, I talked to the guy at Life Transitions. I'm all set." And then I meet the family. I said, "I remember meeting your mom, but I didn't gather information. I didn't, anyway." So it's planning is important. Pen to paper stuff. We Daniel and I we work together at Life Transitions. We were invited to speak at a facility. What's it called? The Older Adults Activity Center or something like that. It's like a not a nursing home, but it's a place where folks 50 and up go and play pool and play cards and do crafts and hang out and whatever. We were invited to speak to. There's about 50 people there. That came, and all they knew was two funeral directors were coming to talk about anything under the sun. And it was amazing. All these people were on the edge of their seat and were asking a lot of the same questions we hear over and over again. But many of them were about planning. Is it a good idea to plan? How do you plan? Should we plan? And then people chiming in saying, well, when Mom died, she was fully planned out, and all we had to do was confirm a few things. So that's what we want to do. And it's amazing how, what they say, 51% of people in Canada die without wills. And so if you're dying without a will, you likely probably don't have a whole lot of other plans too. So we're talking to at least half the country with these podcasts here, Greg, that folks, let's get our senses about us and get some plans put together.
Yeah, that's right. And another point that I think is important to bring up here today on this podcast, James, has to do with and again, we'll get to this within the book and maybe delve into it a little deeper.
Yeah.
But death doesn't take a holiday, and when people are on vacation, they don't for the most part, I'm sure, give any thought to what would happen if one of them or both of them died when they were, say, out of the province, out of the jurisdiction, or even out of the country,
Yeah.
or on another continent.
Yeah.
Because when people pass away, away from home, there's a whole other realm of issues that have to be dealt with.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just as easy as having the body cremated in another country and bringing the ashes back on Air Canada.
Right.
Because some parts of the world don't embrace cremation like we do here in North America.
Right.
And the only option to get that person back home will be a full repatriation, which is extremely extensive and can be expensive.
Oh, big time, big time. I know one of the companies that I know you worked for in the past kind of specializes in some of that shipping, those shipping scenarios, and we've even leaned on them for their expertise. But yeah, you could be looking at a hefty bill. You got consulate paperwork and this and airfare and lead lined casket. Yeah, it's that's right. I'm not sure how many travel agents even have that conversation with people. Like there's probably a hard place to put it in your dream trip to Spain. Oh, by the way, what if you die? That usually is not part of the fun and games of making a trip planning. But I'd be interested to talk to a travel agent and ask them, does that ever come up? Is there an insurance or something that people are offered to cover the possible expenses? Which that's way to dampen the holiday.
Yeah, that's right. And I've researched this to a degree, and I write about it in the book as well, James, that the very best type of repatriation insurance is what funeral homes sell, which provides all of the administration and back office support to pull it all together and get the deceased back to their home community, back to a funeral home in their home community. But the other types of insurance that are available through travel agents and employer group plans, typically, as far as I know, do not provide any administrative service, and the amount of money that they will cover is typically capped at a lower amount too.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you would know. Yeah, I agree. We've not sold many of those policies, but the travel assurance program, it's called, and it's incredible. It's worldwide. I want to say it's less than $600 one time, covers you for one lifetime on the planet type of thing. But if you're looking at $11,000 repatriation fees, compared to a $500 one-time, that's a no-brainer, really. But that's true. That's true. But again, even that, like when I think about my own travel, the last thing I think about is dying. I'm very okay with death, but yeah, that's a tough one to sort of bring in the specter of death on your trip to Greece or something, or even like the happiest place on earth. I'm going to Disneyland. Oops, and then you die. But I guess that's been today's topic, that death it doesn't take a day off, and it doesn't care if you're on your dream trip. When it's your time, it's your time.
Yeah.
And without planning, it is a disaster city.
It is. And that type of repatriation insurance as well that many funeral homes offers, like yours does, it does not ask any medical questions, and it's not based on one's age either. So whether someone is older or younger, the premium is, and I've helped clients set up that type of insurance a number of times.
Right.
It's extremely effective and so much better than really any other type of insurance that I'm aware of. And I worked as a broker for years.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because you know way more about insurance than I do. I still feel like I'm like 14 years old when I look at my own insurance coverage. It seems like gobbledygook to me. But I'm glad to hear you say that, because you know that world. Because I've sometimes shied away. People say, "What about these insurance things?" Like, they're really good, I hear. So yeah, I'm glad to know that it is as good as it is. We hardly push anything on people, but I've presented that many times to people that I know are snowbirds and they travel a lot. But that's good to know that it really is as good as it sounds.
Yeah, I've seen the benefits of it so many times. And when I worked as a supervisor for this large mortuary, that you had mentioned, that you and I are both well aware of.
Yeah.
I had seen the benefits come through
Sure.
in that type of environment for families so many times, and so I would urge you, James, to be, perhaps a little more willing to open the door to that topic with people, because they should be buying it. It's
Yeah.
excellent value.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. There you go. There's my lesson for. Oh, sorry. I keep hitting my camera here. My lesson for the day. That's good. Our goal in our company is to serve people as best as we possibly can, to match what they need, and yeah. That's an excellent encouragement for me. I appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. But I can understand the delicate spot that you and your team are in with life transitions, because you don't want to come across, as some funeral homes and some funeral directors have, as with that aggressive pressure salesy approach, as you had mentioned, and you and your team don't do that, and that's a great approach.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. It's kind of a fine line, I guess, because we don't want to chicken out presenting things to people that could be helpful. But yeah, suddenly I feel like, oh, now what's he selling me? We don't want to. We want to sort of tell as opposed to sell, I guess, is what we say. But,
that's right. Yeah. And I've been there many times too, and having sold prearranged funerals for years,
right.
Having sold life insurance and disability insurance and critical illness insurance and mutual funds. It's a delicate approach that you have to take with people, and especially if they're on the fence about even if they want it. Right. And that's why I'm so relieved now that all I'm selling now basically is this whole message of the importance of being prepared. And it's much easier than in some cases trying to sell these types of insurance plans.
Yeah, I bet. Well, and obviously I know, because we spent enough time talking the last few months, that you really believe in your book. I've read it myself. I even believe in the book. So yeah, what an easy thing to present and sell, if you will, something that you believe in, and it's powerful and it's needed. So yeah, I'm glad you're in the sweet spot, Greg. You're in the sweet spot.
Well, I hope so. I had a recent conversation with a life insurance company, and they're planning to use my book and my message as the cornerstone of their 2024 sales campaign, which is awesome.
That is great. Yeah, congratulations. That is awesome.
Yeah, so I'm quite excited about that. And there's a bank that is now looking at my message, and there's also another large hospice organization which is looking at my message too. So it's starting to gain some traction.
Yeah,
but as my coach,
I hope it takes off. It's just the right size too. Some people, if you gave someone a book that was maybe bigger, people are like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get to it. And if it was smaller, people would say, oh yeah, what is this, a brochure? But it's but yeah, I think you've got a really good thing going there, Greg. So I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I was doing it. I was invited to a local Indigo store last night where I signed some books that they had brought in.
Oh, cool.
And my contact at the Indigo store was admitting to me that she wasn't sure where the book should even be placed, whether it should be placed in the resource section with the information about will planning, or if it should be in business, or it should be in retirement. But anyway, right. It is a unique. It's certainly a different message.
What a great problem that your book covers that many topics. So probably the proper answer was like, well, you put it in all the sections.
I asked if she would do that, and she said no, they can't. They have to.
Oh, come on, Indigo.
They have to pick one and go with that.
Yeah, see, that's too linear. We're in the age of. If I want to be a raccoon, I'm a raccoon, and put me in all the sections. Anyway,
I'll tell her that.
Yeah. Listen, I told you I was all super free and easy, but I'm getting these messages that I think I've got to leave podcast world and deal with here.
Yes, do I understand?
Yeah, but so I'm excited to we keep teasing people about talking about your book. Hope we're going to get into it next time, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah, I'd like to get into that, and just so that people are aware, this is the book here. Do not ignore your mortality. Practical advice from a funeral and financial insider.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, and this will bring up all kinds of points that will be so informative to help people.
Yeah, big time, big time. Yeah. Yep. I barely know you, Greg, but I'm proud of you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, James. I know you've got to go, so we'll connect at another point soon.
Okay, Greg. All the best to you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you.